Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Join with me in our salute to our flag and country. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing for our prayer.
God of heaven and earth, thank you for the blessing of this day, for the breath of life, and for hope in times that can seem difficult. We pray for your blessing on these gathered here to do the work of the city of Guthrie. Give them strength and wisdom to lead well and make the decisions that will benefit the people of this community according to your purposes. In the Bible, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have placed them to promote peace and order and justice. I pray for our mayor, for our city officials, and the council assembled here to do this. Be the guard over them and their families. Bring discernment, harmony, and joy to this meeting. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Bring discernment to the meeting. I was like, discernment is here.
Brian's our answer to prayer.
Sorry.
Pray I answer.
I call to order our...
It's kind of an inside joke.
We took psych evaluations today, and Brian came up passed with discernment, so he said discernment. That's the inside joke.
I call to order our city council meeting of June 18th, 2024. Second item on the agenda is public comments, community announcements, and recognitions, and I have one request here from Mr. Murphy to come and talk to us about speeding on Noble and budget cuts to police. Mr. Murphy.
2 weeks ago, William Murphy, 3208 West Noble. 2 weeks ago, I came and spoke to this council about the speeding and the problem we're having on the west side of town. I find now that it's way worse citywide. There's many things that the council can do. As I spoke to our city manager, who I finally reached after 2 weeks. I'm making a point of that. I've now been trying to stay in communication with the PD so that I don't get so theatrical. But we can't be theatrical anymore about what this is doing citywide. The chief explained to me that budget constraints put him there. We're not writing enough tickets to stop the problem because it's speeding is city-wide. And it ain't just out there where I live or where out my shop is, my business is, where our hospital is. It's all over town. Our state doesn't, they assess the fines and we get a penny or two back. This is your gentleman's department. You need to get hold of the state. And Chuck Hall, Colin Dooley, they were great for your pictures last week or 2 weeks ago. But they're not doing their job. They're taking money from us. When we write the tickets, we don't get hardly any of that money back. And that money should go right back to the chief so that he can tell them that we're having a problem out here speeding, we're having a problem citywide. The time they waste writing a ticket isn't cost effective for everything that they're doing. When they are out and they are doing patrolling out here, they're not doing it. They're not doing it right. This week I witnessed one of the officers playing on his phone, sitting in a ditch and letting our speed camera slow the people down. We need to write tickets again and again and again. If we can't figure out where the money was, or where, maybe we need to have somebody come and take a look at the books. I am not kidding about this, folks. This problem's going to get solved. Accidental deaths by speeding and malicious play out here anywhere through the town or east, west, north, or south has got to stop. That's all I have to say, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. The third item on our agenda is consent agenda A, B, and C. A is the approval of the city council minutes of June 4th. B is the approval of payment to Myers Engineering for invoice number 221169-9 for $8,925 for engineering services for Owen Field softball facility upgrade. And C is the approval of the agreement between the City of Guthrie and Sodexo Operations for use of Highland Hall facilities for the Logan County Aging Services. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Is there a second? I'll make a second, then.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Tracy already did, sorry.
Quite all right.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Submit your votes, please.
All votes are in.
See the votes. Unanimous approval. Are all those present to approve consent agenda items A, B, and C? Item number 4 is items removed from the consent agenda. There were none. Item number 5, bid number 2024-06, demolition and site clearance services. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our annual bid award for a dilapidated structures program. This year we used some of the funding to catch up from last year when they didn't go through with their promises. But also this year we actually had a good amount of volunteer demolition as well as fixing up. So right now we're looking at 3. One would be for Native Wrecking out of Edmond for 624 East Harrison for the amount of $9,810, and then 2 properties for K&M Wrecking 919 North Ash and 1217 East Lincoln for a total of $14,600 for those 2, and so it'd be a total of $24,410 for all 3 structures.
And these were all on your previous list at the...
These were part of this last year's, yeah. Some of the funding went to cover last year's after, like I said, there was no follow through in that, so we used some of that early on in the budget year to take care of those.
Okay. Any questions from council?
No, sir.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Last thoughts? Okay, submit your bid. Your votes.
All votes are in.
See the votes. Unanimous approval for bid number 2024-06, demolition of the 3 properties identified. Item number 6, RFP number 2024-05, SS4A Safety Action Plan. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As some of the council should remember, we got a grant to do a safety, Safe Streets for All is what they call it, SS4A grant. We were one of 3 jurisdictions. Oklahoma City got one, as well as ACOG, the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. And so our portion, we're looking, we sent out an RFP not too long ago. And we got 4 responses. The staff, which would be city manager, myself, Chief Swager, and the Public Works Director, Tenny Maker, all did a review of the submittals, and we were all unanimous to look at recommendation to hire Kimley Horn and Associates to do this plan. The original date for this plan was to expire December of this year. I've been in communication with the Federal Highway and the local Federal Highway representatives here in Oklahoma, and we're currently in the process of doing an extension. It would be a year extension, so that would be through then instead of 2024, 2025. With the current consultant, they would start work essentially immediately if the contract is approved, and we would be looking at September of 25 for an actual adoption of a plan. And so during that year, there'll be ample opportunity for public input. That's a large part of it. And so the consultant will be taking that aspect and having different workshops, talking with stakeholders, as well as us staff in that to formulate, and then taking a lot of the data, traffic data, accident data, and all that, and then putting all that into a plan that will have essentially recommendations that we can, in the end, look towards to help better make our streets safer.
Sorry about that.
So with that, we recommend that, and I should mention, The total funding we received was $250,000, 250,000. 200,000 of it was for the grant, 50,000 of it was local match. And then most all of them came in at the same price. In this case, it's for $249,900 for the cost for that plan. So we recommend that the council approve the contract.
Okay, questions of Dan?
So what exactly are we gonna get for this $250,000?
Oh, it's like I was saying, it truly is. If you remember, there was a program that was like Safe Streets to Schools or whatever.
Safe routes to school.
Safe routes to school. Thank you, Eddie. It's basically a similar thing, except we're looking at the entire community. So it's going to be looking at different aspects on ways to help make, mobility, especially pedestrian and that, easier, safer in ways that we can look. So it's almost like a comprehensive plan for safety of our community.
So it'll be looking at a lot of the things that Mr. Murphy was talking to us about.
Yes, that
wouldn't
will
it?
come into play. Yeah, and like I said, there'll be a big public input part of it. That's again what the big thing the consultant will be providing. And then after all of that, it'll formulate a plan and it'll give you kind of some policies or action plans on what we could do. It could be as simple as lowering some speed limits on some streets. It could be, design. There's a whole lot of elements that go into that, but it should be a very good, useful plan for us to help with, again, the pedestrian and safety, on our streets, whether it's walking, biking, even cars.
Will this enhance our ability to possibly get grant approval?
Yes,
on some
you are
things?
correct. Thank you, Mayor, for mentioning that. Yeah, and there is a lot, as they say, a lot of money there for these type of programs. But the first step is having this safety action plan in place. So that's the other thing, is it will open up an avenue for us to get more federal funding to implement some of the recommendations that are in that plan.
So we have to get this done
Yep.
first and then move forward. and
Yep,
write it.
yep,
Okay.
and then we can start to tap into some of the funding to actually implement.
That was the question next.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah.
I'll make the motion to approve it.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any other questions of Dan? All right, submit your votes.
All votes are in.
See the votes. Unanimous approval then to move forward with the rep number 2024-05, the Safety Action Plan. Item number 7, appeal of Historic Preservation Commission application number 24-008. Dan?
First, I wanted to start off, late Friday afternoon, I got a request from the applicant asking for a continuance. He had a personal matter come up and was not going to be available, so he asked that the item be continued until the July 2nd council meeting. So at this point, it's kind of up to the discretion of the council on how you'd like to proceed. There's nothing that would prohibit you guys from proceeding with any action because it is agendized. I know there's some people here that have signed up to speak, so like I said, I'll kind of see what the council wants to do. At that point, I can give a brief, if you want to move forward, a brief staff report, and we can, figure it out.
I object to tabling it.
What's that?
I said I object to tabling.
I don't. I make a motion to put it to the next meeting.
I object to I have strong objections to tabling this item
Why is that, Grant?
because we have people that have invested time to be here to speak.
I agree. I'd like to hear him speak.
I want to hear him speak as
Well,
well.
I was going to say, I will say that I know in the past, I can't remember exactly when, it doesn't matter, that when we had a somewhat similar instance, the council did allow for the public that was here to speak.
Exactly.
And have it on record, and then after that, tabled it to the next item, so then you didn't have the people that would have to show up again or didn't have an opportunity. So that is also an option for the council.
What was the planning commission's vote on this?
Oh, the HPC was a 3-2 denial.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to hear.
yeah, and that's why they're appealing it, because obviously if it were approved at HPC, we wouldn't be here. But our ordinance does allow any action by the Historic Preservation Commission to be appealed to the city council.
Well, I think before we vote on anything, whether to not to appeal or what, I think we should at least let them talk,
Yeah,
right? We'll
exactly.
agree on that.
I agree.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I bet you every one of them's back here next time that we meet.
What's that?
So,
I bet they all come back next time too.
Oh, sure.
you know, my initial response would be, since we've already published it, and that there are at least 2 people here that want to speak on the issue, that have signed the paperwork, and they're investing their time. I don't know the reasons that the applicant isn't here, for sure, but they are certainly legitimate. I mean, I would think they would be. Is this a significant thing? But clearly, we can still listen
Yeah. Let's hear it out.
from the individuals, whether they're pro or con, and then I guess decide after that whether or not we want to go ahead and vote or go ahead and table. We have a motion. We have had a motion to.
No, I want to.
No, I don't think there was a motion made. I
I
mean,
thought you made a motion.
No, I said I don't have a problem pushing it forward to the next meeting.
Okay.
We don't have to, we can hear them first.
Okay, so that meets your need,
Correct.
okay? Are there any other questions from the,
I know the applicant wanted to be here to speak. He chose the right decision to go to his daughter's doubleheader, which he's missed too many of, and I told him that was the right decision. In my opinion, put his family first. So,
okay,
Let's hear it out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and you all have obviously the staff report, so I'm not gonna go over everything. I think you have the information unless you do have some questions of me.
We just leave it like that.
I'm for either way.
okay.
Well, let's hear it out.
Let's go ahead and hear it. We'll go ahead and hear it. Does anybody have any, before we hear from the individuals that are listed here?
Do you want to do it?
Dan, you need to provide your staff
you-
report to the council.
Okay, that's true
Let's-
for on
let's-
the record.
yeah.
You're
Yeah,
right.
let's put it
Okay.
on the record,
Yeah,
and then
you're
we'll go
right.
from there.
Yeah, the building's located at 124 West Oklahoma, which is the building just down across from Bank First on the corner there. The applicant has recently purchased that building, and he was looking to do an upgrade to the front storefront area. He was also looking to do window paint, or to paint the windows upstairs. No change to any of the upper level, but as you'll see on the screen, the bottom part, he's looking to do more of a metal area. The windows are divided as such, more of a modern door. And then there would be a canopy with essentially like the rods that come down to support that. I think there's a picture of the existing, Aaron.
Is that bottom brick? I couldn't-
Not right now, but the proposal is.
That's what I.
Yeah, because this is what's existing right now. It's primarily wood. There is some covering on the outside that is of metal that was there for protection. This storefront goes back to the 80s in that. Prior to that, it was probably more bland, simple in that. But when they did many of the remodels in the downtown in the 80s, this is also one of the buildings. So this current rendition is from the 80s. The applicant is looking to, if you could go back to that, Aaron.
Is
The
that
sandstone.
siding on the original right now? I can't tell.
It's wood, but it has like, they put some type of metal on the outside to protect it in a couple places. But the sandstone that is shown, kind of the pillars, those would not change. Those would be the same. But the upper area with the windows, they're looking to replace those with a more clear window or just a simple window. And then obviously on the bottom, you can see what they're looking to do with the windows. All of those pane or the frames will be metal. And then on the bottom, they are adding the brick, which currently isn't there. That's currently wood in that. So I think that pretty well sums up everything.
So can you go back a minute? So where is the metal that they're putting up that
Basically that black.
I've been hearing about?
All the vertical black.
Yeah, all this.
Well, that's the metal in between the windows that
Yeah,
have to
that's
be to
the
seal,
metal.
that has to be there for the windows.
Yeah,
And
but
wood
that's
what's
the
in it
metal.
now.
And then the awning will be metal as well.
Well, some I've talked to said they're putting this big chunk of metal at the bottom and they're covering up the windows at the top with metal. I just don't see that.
No, there'll be brick here, and again, they are changing the style of pane, but the size of the windows will be the same. And it will have a metal outline or a frame, but the windows will be clear versus kind of the,
Kind of like Bank First across the street.
yeah, similar to that, yeah. Because
Can
it
we
would be
go-
all black.
Can we go back to the picture before that? Before that was done? What?
Do you have the old ones, Aaron?
This one?
No, I think the 80s, is that the one we're looking at?
Yes.
While that picture is still up, the building next to it, those windows, which would be what he's talking about
Yeah.
replacing, are those wood or metal?
Wood.
These over here?
Yes.
They're wood.
wood
The only
side.
difference is these are clear paints where these are more of the, I don't even know the.
There you go.
There it is.
There it is right there.
But yeah, that was the building when they, right before they started the last major renovation.
And I believe the Bobo family is the one that restored it.
That is correct.
And they tried to restore it back to what it used to look like.
No, they were the last ones to do it. Back in the 80s, they didn't own it.
There's
The
the
Bobos were the ones that fixed on the street to allow for the staircases to go underneath and that, and they also got the garage doors on the rear. But this was prior to that. This was in the 80s.
And this is, I guess, when they had the metal up on all the buildings.
Yeah, the awnings and that.
And those
yeah.
windows that run on the bottom along
Can
the
you go
side of the
back
building are
again?
now open, they're not brick anymore. Those are bricked in, look like.
On the bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are open somewhere that.
Where is it? What is that
Because
picture?
they put a new, because here you can see the sandstone, and when they redid it, they put another sandstone there, which was more of that brick previously.
Is that how it used to look?
Yeah, that was in the 80s.
It's terrible.
Is that brick at the bottom?
I mean, do we want to leave it like it is or upgrade it to what he wants?
Is that brick at the bottom on the, in the
No.
80s? In the
In
80s?
the 80s, yeah, it was that, I don't even know what kind of.
Black tile, that
Yeah,
black
like a
tile stuff?
Right, it was like a tile.
Okay.
Right.
That was probably
And then it went to the current.
And they just covered up the windows up
Yeah,
above?
as you see, there
The
were.
stained glass windows are in there, they're just covered
Right,
up,
but
correct?
these are all been replaced, and even as you see, the front facade now has the more architectural
Right,
design.
but were those stained glass windows behind that facade?
No, these were part of the last major upgrade.
That
in
was
the
an
80s.
addition then
Yeah,
in the
the
80s?
80s.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I
So
was.
initially they were clear.
I honestly
we
couldn't
don't
tell you,
know.
because I don't have any pictures to confirm it, but I
Windows are
assume.
there, they're just, you can't tell what they
Yeah,
are.
because most all of those were covered up on all buildings
A
downtown.
bunch of them are though.
Yeah.
Were other windows in downtown original to this kind of window?
Yeah, I think there's a store just like 2 or 3 down that is that kind of stained glass window.
Yeah.
I'm talking
If that's
about,
what you're
from-
asking.
no, I'm talking
Yeah.
about prior to
Oh, prior
renovation.
to.
Oh, yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you. Yeah,
I've slept a few times, I don't remember.
That's all I was asking.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Here's the question. Is that more historically correct, Joe? Or is the other? And if not, then where's the proof in the stained glass? that-
Need to be addressing that
Yeah.
to,
You can ask him that question. I
Dan?
mean, honestly, it probably depends on what you go by. If you go by our guidelines, yes. If you go by the National Park Service and some of those guidelines, what's being proposed is acceptable. So it really comes down to, what we, as a community, feel is probably the best direction for the design of a lot of the storefronts. Because one thing to keep in mind is, our district exists because we have contributing resources. These buildings are considered contributing resources. Changing the storefronts will not affect that status. If it did, most of the buildings in the downtown would not be contributing resources anymore. The key is a lot of times the type of material, and so again, like the brickwork, if somebody was wanting to come and cover all that up and that would be trouble. That would take it from a contributing resource to a non-contributing resource. And one of the examples I give is like the Vapor Maven or the Vapor Shop over on Harrison. That's a non-contributing resource because it's been substantially changed on the exterior from its original in that. But like this building, none of the contributing aspects are going to change. So I hope that answered your question.
I was just trying to get to whether the windows originally were clear or stained glass.
Yeah, and that's the
all.
thing. I cannot confirm that with certainty.
These windows look the new windows look a lot taller than what these are. Is that?
I was trying to look at the one on the side.
Oh, we're looking at the top ones. They're redoing the top ones as well.
Right.
Show that one picture,
but
it'll show
again,
the
right.
1980s.
Yeah, the size is not changing, but obviously the frame and the type of glass.
But they're doing the top ones too in their rendering?
That's just painting. They're just painting.
They're not replacing those?
No, no.
They're already metal?
No, I do not believe so. They might be vinyl. A lot of our windows downtown were replaced with vinyl, but I don't think they're metal.
Any other questions of Dan? We have two individuals that would like to speak, and then we can,
Sure.
then you can come back up. Valerie Duncan? Just identify yourself as a citizen of Guthrie.
I am a
and
citizen
You
of-
have 5 minutes.
My name is Valerie Duncan. I'm a citizen of Guthrie. I live at 307 North Capitol, and I am the vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. And I'm here this evening. The chairman wasn't available at the last Historic Preservation meeting, so I actually chaired that meeting. It was my heartfelt opinion that this particular design, while it would be wonderful in downtown Oklahoma City or Edmond, or even a strip mall someplace, it is not appropriate for the historic Guthrie town site. It is, it doesn't fit with the historical integrity of the district. It doesn't fit with the vision and the direction that those people who wrote the ordinance intended, in my opinion. And it would be a big mistake, I think, to approve this particular design for downtown Guthrie. I've lived here in Guthrie since 1993, raised my children here, and I've done everything I can to give them a sense of pride in Guthrie's history. And I think it's really important that we, as a town, make those considerations. So I would ask you to consider not approving this. Thank you.
Questions of Ms. Duncan? When you say you don't think it fits the historical, can you be more specific?
Well,
What
when
doesn't fit?
when
What's being
the
proposed?
when the guidelines, the ordinance and the guidelines were written, this particular building, as it appears now, was used as the example of.
But it was already renovated in the
Yeah.
80s to this.
Right.
From
And it was
something totally different.
it was considered an example of what would be the best way to renovate buildings in the downtown area. It was used as an example. I think, like I said, the design itself would be great in another place, but the flat black metal and the flat windows and things like that, I've always preached that historic preservation in Guthrie is economic development. People come to Guthrie. They spend their hours that they're not working, and they spend their money because they want to see something unique, something that you can't see anyplace else. And if we continue to chip away at what makes downtown Guthrie unique, I think that it's not going to benefit the city of Guthrie.
Well, I, like you, moved my family here in the early 90s and have been as engaged as I could possibly be in the entire community. And I would hate to see it end up staying like this versus something like that. And I've got no skin in that game whatsoever. But I know that if it were me doing it just personally, I'd leave it at that point. And what's there looks a lot better than what's here. And I'm just trying to get someone to show me how it looked prior. Well,
I think
it
didn't
look good prior.
well, no, it didn't, but
It didn't.
I think
But it didn't look like
is-
that either.
Well,
That was my.
wood sash
Let-
was,
Let me finish,
Okay.
please, okay? I'm giving my opinion because you gave yours, okay? We're all entitled to opinions, and that's mine. So, Again, I don't know this gentleman. This is the first I'm hearing of this, other than a conversation I had the other day, very briefly, with one of the councilmen. So, that's all. But I want to hear everybody out and hear all of the opinions.
Grant, were you finished with your comment?
No, I mean, I was on the
No.
council that wrote the ordinance, and what he wants is in no way, shape, or form what was intended. Now,
But-
I mean, I didn't really like the ordinance. I was not all that much in favor of it, but he knew what he was buying when he bought into a historic district. His attitude has been nothing but flippant about historic preservation. And I think we ought to sustain the commission. That's my opinion.
When you talk about flat metal and flat windows, can you elaborate?
It's a very contemporary looking design.
Okay,
You
so
can go,
flat with the surface of the building as opposed to
And
they're
flat
kind of
black-
indented right now.
and metal as well. It doesn't conform to the design, the overall historical design and the integrity of that design that's maintained in downtown Guthrie. And maybe I should point at this point.
He's sorry for that.
That's okay. I've just recently retired from the Oklahoma Historical Society. I worked for them for 33 years, so I have an extensive background in historic preservation.
Well, I drove around, again, I mean, before this meeting for 40 minutes, trying to figure out, okay, where is this type of window framing not? Okay, and there's a lot of building that it's not, but there's also some that it is. And when you drive around like I did, you'll see that as well. That if it's so non-conforming, I'm just curious on how all that got approved.
Might have been prior to
There-
HPC.
Well, no, not so much.
And there's a difference between a storefront, Brian, and then just windows up top.
You come right up Division and you'll see right up Division, it's all right there in Recent.
Well, and we
What's the
could,
vision?
From Hoboken on up. Okay, I understand it may not be in historic, but I'm talking, when you start looking, you'll see them when you start driving around. At least I
Well,
did.
yeah,
Bank
and you're
First, right across the street.
There are examples of things that have been done in the past that shouldn't have been done that way.
exactly right.
I
And my-
understand. I
my-
get that.
Comment here would be, just because people made a mistake in the past,
No, I
is
agree
not
with that.
not a good reason to continue to make the same mistakes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments, Ms. Duncan?
I have comment, but not for her, no.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chappell? Name, whether you're a resident of the city, and you have 5 minutes.
Joe Chappell, longtime resident of Guthrie. I noticed when we were sitting here, you know, they had a lot of the pictures of the signs coming into Guthrie, and I wrote down a couple of things, you know, the Victorian buildings, historic Guthrie, territorial capital. It's part of our brand. I'd also enjoyed Steve's article in the Guthrie, Oklahoma Guide recently, and I highlighted a couple of things that I thought were great that Steve had said. We boast the largest contiguous historical district in the United States with over 2,000 buildings on the National Historic Register. It is a town filled with fantastic Victorian architecture. Over 14, and this isn't your article, but on the next page, over 1,400 acres, U.S. National Historic Landmark, largest contiguous historic district. And here, interestingly enough, it remains one of the largest urban districts on the National Register. I think, and I may be wrong, but this is that building right here.
That's what I want to
Just the corner of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, what was done to that building before the 80s was that it, you know, they covered up all the old historic windows on the side. They completely redid the facade up top and just put 2 square windows in. Well, that was all restored by the Historical Preservation Society, was it not? At least that was brought to my attention. So those old windows were put back. There were a lot of mistakes made in Guthrie buildings in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. And in 1978, when HP was founded, a lot of buildings were restored to be more historical. Not that they were done at that time, but they were done to be more historical. You know, I served on HP for 8 years, and I'm no longer on there, but I took the job seriously, and I've even had a conversation with the young man that wants to do this project, and I told him, I said, you know, I've been indoctrinated. I believe in this stuff. And interestingly enough, and they mentioned it, but you know, the building that we're presented with in our historic preservation ordinance and guidelines on what we want buildings to look like in Guthrie is this building.
I know, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know that, I just have this in case anybody wants to see it. But this describes to commissioners what a historic building should look like in Guthrie. And there have been, you know, HP came around to stop bad design from happening that had happened in the past and to follow a path and forward. And I've got just a couple more things since I'm trying to get 15 minutes into my 5 minutes here. You know, recently, and I work in Perry quite often, and there have been some, in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been some buildings restored in Perry that Guthrie should aspire to do, and I just want you to, I'll just sort of pass some of these out. This is what Guthrie should aspire to do, in my opinion. And we have an HP. They don't have one, but they've obviously got someone up there that has bought into historic preservation. Earlier, Dan mentioned that, you know, we're taught to follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. And there's 10 listed here. Number one is that it requires minimal change to the defining characteristics of the building and its site and environment. Number two, the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. Now, historic preservation is hardcore. I get that. And a lot of times there's not a lot of room for compromise. And I know that when I was on HP, we made some terrible mistakes.
But you were on it and you served.
But I was on it. But there were things that I wish that we had done differently. And always I err on the side of we should have done things that, you know, what this book talks about over and over again is to be able to use photographs as a point of comparison. You know, historic photographs, like the one in that magazine. Is that my 5 minutes?
No,
and I
can talk more.
And I appreciate, well, I really don't think I have that.
5 minutes is up.
I don't think that I have that much to add to it.
You can still answer questions.
The only other thing, can I say one more thing?
Yep.
Okay. The only other thing is that, you know, we talk about the Guthrie Historic District, but something even more significant, that there is a portion of the historic district that is a national historic landmark. Not all of downtown is, but there is a certain area, and there's a map in here, and when I find it,
You better start wrapping it up.
I'll pass it up to you. But this area, right downtown on Main Street, is a historic landmark. It's not just the town site. It's like an added distinction, and so that's where we should really fight to preserve the territorial and historical buildings that we have, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chappell. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I just have a couple. And again, I'm at this point neither for or against this. I'm trying to have a conversation that throws different points of view out there and different opinions out there. That's what I'm trying to do, and I like everybody else's opinion as well.
And nobody's wrong.
But whenever I notice that, and I do this a lot, that, you know, people think that automatically I'm jumping to one side, and I'm not. Okay, I'm just trying to get to the bottom line, because Dan said something pretty particular in this whole scenario, that, what was it, the National Historical Society would be approved under? Is that what you said?
There are guidelines from the National Park Service.
The National Park
Yeah,
Service?
that allow storefront, or to have storefronts, and it can have a more contemporary look.
So this would be approved by that particular agency?
I don't think they're talking about an historic landmark area, though.
I don't know if they are or if they're not.
All I'm saying is there is different guidelines to go by. It's not to say that we have to go by that
I understand.
guideline.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I was saying. You know, we have our guidelines as well.
And so, and so, there's opinions that we make. Just like you and I have been agreeing on stuff you've been on it for a long time, I've been here for a long time, we've agreed and
I'm
disagreed.
not on it anymore.
No, I know that, I'm saying, but in the past you were, and we agreed and disagreed on things over the years.
Sure.
And have always been able to call each other and talk about it. But in this particular case right here, the chair of that board wasn't at that meeting. Okay, so how do I know the chair of that board wouldn't have approved it? Now, you can say they wouldn't have, because you
Chair's
already
right over
talked to
She's
them.
here, you can ask her.
She hates
She's
it.
here, right here.
Yeah, you could ask
So,
her.
we can, Maneka, we could say you wouldn't have, okay? But again, you weren't at that meeting, just like the gentleman that would defend this, and I'm not gonna sit here and defend it in his stead. Okay, again, I'm just throwing stuff out to you, just like he's not here, okay? And so,
Things happen. Things
yeah,
come up.
things come up, things happen. Hence, that is one of the main reasons that I would not have an issue with this being pushed forward to another council meeting, to hear another side of it. Because I know one thing is the picture that you showed before this construction right here looked terrible.
What building?
The one that we saw up there were before this particular renovation.
With the
Yeah,
orange.
yeah, it looked terrible.
That's right there.
Yeah, but
Yeah, or that one, either
Yeah,
one,
it's terrible.
either
But
one.
the renovation, but see, that's what HP was to stop from happening that had happened in the past.
I know. when
They
that-
had destroyed the history of
Yeah.
that building.
And that was terrible.
But it's my understanding that the Logan County Historic Society paid for that new facade to be done on this building. That could, am I wrong? It's just what I was told, so.
But what is, okay, so let's say I
But
wrote the check
anyway,
and paid for it, what does that matter?
And like, well, and just my point is that that building to me, and it's an opinion,
Right.
right? But that building to me was selected by the people that came up with our historic preservation as a guide, to guide us. And, you know, there's only 4 or 5 buildings that have those entresol,
Windows.
But that building,
well, we have a lot of we lost most of the entresol windows in downtown. You can look at, I would say over 50% of them, they just filled it in. It looks like to me that this wasn't there until they did this restoration again and they added those block glass tiles, which you see on other buildings in downtown Guthrie, and whether they're original or not. But to me, all the buildings that have them are the most historic looking one. And once again, that's just my opinion. But I do think it's interesting that this particular building was chosen as the example for what Guthrie building should
chosen by the group that paid to have the facade done, right?
Well, no, because the Logan County Historical Society is different than the Guthrie. So it was a whole different group, but they came up with enough money to put the facade on this building, and I think it was done without any money from the owners at the time. And there's a contract that I looked at, but I didn't read it, and I'm not a lawyer. But anyway.
All right. Anybody else on the council have any questions of Mr. Chappell?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate you,
Thank
Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, obviously, the first question at hand is do we want to have a motion to defer this topic to the next city council?
I move to sustain the commission's findings and recommendation.
That's a motion.
That's a motion to sustain.
So, in other words, he's wanting to vote tonight.
Tonight.
You're voting against
I'll second that.
change.
There's been a motion made and seconded and laid upon the table.
Okay,
Yeah, just for clarification, it would uphold the HPC's decision.
Which was no.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So a yes vote
So we
agrees.
have-
Well, before we go forward, then I have an opinion. You know, it's been a long time since I walked these streets, and driving through there, you really don't pay attention to the buildings, paying attention to the streets and traffic and what have you. But I went up there and met with the applicant and looked at that street like I haven't in a long time, looked at the buildings, walked, paid attention to what I consider really to be the most valuable part of those buildings is the rock, the brickwork, all the facade, whatever, ornamental brickwork and stonework, and they're really attractive. And looking down parallel, how some of the buildings stand out from the others, it's just really a new appreciation for it. Now, this storefront here, which is not original, we all agree, right? Has metal on it. That's a thin metal covering, which is typical of siding work done on old houses that you can't cover the woodwork with siding. They run this through a brake system and make it all fit. I don't know why that's on there unless it's like the store next to it where you see clearly in this picture, and I saw personally where this wood is rotting and falling apart and the paint's peeling off of it. So I assume that they probably covered this wood up for the same reasons, I don't know. When I first saw these pictures, they did it no justice. I listened to the meeting. In fact, I got a call from the applicant just before it was finished. And I told him I had to agree with HPC. I said, I don't like the picture. But we had a discussion. He said, if you'll just come talk to me, I'll come talk to you. So after we hung up, I went to the last 10 minutes of that meeting, and there was a key word said by Nathan. And he said 3D. And that was an epiphany to me because this picture that we're presented for this new remodel is not 3D, it's 2D. And it really doesn't do it justice. So I went up there and talked to him about the materials he was going to use, and I told him that the depth was a big deal. He said the door would be inset a little, probably not as much as this, but he wasn't sure. I looked at all the materials. We went over and looked at Bank First. There is a letter in here from Laverne Downing saying he would approve of that and thinks it would, actually his bank would complement it. So I was told by the applicant it would be the same material, same width, which width was important because in the picture he sent of the drawing, I took it as what I saw initially was thin. I didn't want thin, I wanted something with depth, something with a 3D look. He's not changing the, at first I thought perhaps this was solid glass. It's not. It's gonna be a divider where this awning is. I don't particularly care for the awning, and I told him so. But if you look across the street at the old Lentz building, it's big, tall glass with chrome strips, and there's several buildings on that street, the same design. And they're not attractive in my opinion, and I think everybody agree they need some work too, but that's the building owner's decision and finances. But we did approve Max's building on Wentz and Oklahoma with this black trim and roll-up doors. And it is in the historic district. And it looks good. Looked at the creamery. It looks good. That's not in the historic district, but that black trim looks nice against that brick. Given all that and that, standing out there and looking at it and really taking it in, I changed my mind. I think that'll be an addition to the block. I think maybe it might even inspire others to do some work on their buildings. So I'm for it.
Any other comments?
Well, the Max's building is east of Wentz. It's not in the bullseye pulse of downtown. I understand what you're saying, though, and I agree. His is also a specialty in that it's the garage doors on the side. Again, it's not really a storefront. And there's no windows, I don't believe, on the west side. It's all up top again. As I've been in this town, I mean, I clearly care about the historicalness of this community. I mean, I was on HP, I'm the ex officio, I own one of the buildings. I moved here for this reason. I've said this once and I said it before, people from China don't come here and take pictures because they're aluminum fronts. If we allow this, you might as well just get rid of HP, because other than a wrecking ball and coming in and just tearing down the building, this is the last level below that. You're removing an entire storefront and you're putting an aluminum front. That's it. You just might as well just pack it up and go home, because anybody can do whatever they want. They can put a metal storefront, it's over. Your next thing beyond that is the wrecking ball that destroyed this Capitol building that everybody laments, and we're just one step closer. We went to a retreat today, and they put on top of the board, historic preservation, historic city. Well, at what point, and I get it, when I first got here and got on HPC, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're making people change their designs of their logos, and you know, you're getting the ruler out. Joe's going out with the he didn't really, I'm just joking, but you know, you're going out with a ruler, and you're putting paint samples in, and you're spinning it in a glass of water in a laboratory, making sure it's the right color. I'm being over exaggerated with that, but you get my point. Everyone thinks it was like that, and it's not. And I would agree with people, that's way too extreme. But over the years now, I just keep seeing it going and going, and everyone just goes, oh, I love historic, oh, I love the fact that we're historic. But dude, just let that sign change. Oh, okay. Oh, I love that we're historic. Well, don't make them do the windows, just do the, at what point do you start acting like you really do care that it's historic? Like, at what point do you do that? Is it the wrecking ball? Is that the threshold?
Well. So, with that being said, that's where my confusion, I was not on HP. Clearly, I was not. My ex-wife was for quite a while. But Dan tells me, so this is where my confusion is, and the conundrum that I have on this whole thing, okay, is that Dan tells me that this storefront has nothing to do with the historical significance of this building, period. That's what he says.
Why?
But let's take that in a minute,
Yeah.
Adam, because again, you and I've talked about this, and you know, you did mention to me that if it had aluminum on it that had wood grain or something in it, it'd be okay.
Didn't say be okay. I said it would be nice if we could start having compromise.
But it still would have been metal with a wood grain in it, would have been okay. So, but where I'm going with this is, I don't look at it as a wrecking ball.
I didn't say that.
Because you did say that.
No, I did not say this was a wrecking ball. I said this is one level below a wrecking ball.
Okay, below, I'm sorry,
The only
below a
thing
wrecking
left
ball.
after passing this is, well, we'll stop you from taking demolition
But
to the brick building.
in-
That's all that's left if we pass this.
But I'm looking at you, because you were HP, as somewhat of guidance for someone like me that hasn't been on HP, but you're contradicting what Dan's telling me.
No.
Dan, yes, he is.
No.
Dan's telling me that this storefront has nothing to do with the historical significance of this building. Is that true or false, Dan?
From the federal.
My only comment was the changing of the storefront will not affect the status as a contributing
Okay,
resource to
then
the
that-
district.
so that
It doesn't mean that our guidelines or what's wanted is any less significant, because guidelines are just that, they're guidelines. They're to help make decisions like this. They're not set in stone, black and white in that, so there is always some flexibility. But when it comes down to it, all of that should be put together to where a decision that is going to be in the best interest of, you know, not only the downtown, but we as a community. What I try to, you know, put out is more of the true factual stuff. The HPC, as well as even, you know, right now with the council, you're taking all that in. And if you feel that it's going to be a detriment to our downtown, then you should uphold the HPC in that. So there's no, like I said, there's no black and white easy answer, is what I'm
Well,
trying to
that's where
say.
my confusion
Yeah.
comes from, because what I heard is it's not gonna take from its historical significance, but I'm hearing different down at the end of the
There's,
No, and if I could real quick, It depends on what you're looking at is, again, the historical significance of it. It doesn't have to be that the feds say this or we have that. If, you know, the HPC, the community in that feels that these type of aspects are historic and it's needed, then that's something that should be taken into account. Because again, that's why guidelines are guidelines. They're not hard, you know, in black and white, you can't deviate whatsoever, because there is always going to be different things and flexibility in that. And like I said, all I was saying is that just like, again, with Max's building down there that had the new, with the roll-up doors, that did not change its status from a contributing resource. It's still a contributing resource. Now, again, it could be argued whether or not it's appropriate for the district or, you know, not appropriate in terms of what it looks like.
Well, that was, we were all, well, you weren't here, but some of us were here when that was approved, and that was supposed to be an ongoing business, and it never turned out to be that.
No, you're right. And I even told Councilman Case tonight, I am almost probably every other week, about every third week, after them to complete. They would not have even done what they had done if I hadn't been after it in that. It's unfortunate that, you know, we have those owners that don't always follow through, but I try to keep on them because I think it is important to make sure that they do what they promised they were going to do.
I wasn't able to view the entire HPC meeting. I ran out of time today. But did the applicant address any potential that in fact the windows could be indented, if you will? Did the applicant address any of the issues that the metal frames could be somehow fabricated to look like wood? Was any of that addressed by the applicant?
There was some discussion on it. At the end of the day, obviously, there was not any conditions put forth or any specifics that were negotiated, if you want to say, between the applicant and the HPC. And so ultimately, it ended, obviously, with the 3-2 denial. But there was discussion because as Valerie had indicated in that, there was talk of kind of, or even as you indicated, Mayor, kind of the depth and not having a flat look in that. And like Councilman Williams said, the picture doesn't probably do it justice like it should in a lot of ways, but a lot of that discussion was there in that, but ultimately it didn't come into the decision. Okay. Now, I will say from, you know, just like what happened with the building down where Max had, if the council, they could say, okay, we'll go ahead and approve it, but you need to do X, X, and X. That is an option. Because that's even what happened with the appeal that was for Max's building. Those garage doors that are there were not part of the original proposal. Those were essentially approved as a condition from the council. So that could be an option too, to look at another change in the facade that would make everybody happy.
Okay.
Well,
any other comments?
Yeah. If you, I mean, I just being real basic about this. If I take a look at the picture of the green building that we have now, and I take a look at the rendition of the green building is much more historical looking, obviously. You know, it's just a simple observation. And also, when you look back at the 80s picture that was shown, that's a picture after urban renewal. That crap wasn't there in 1889. After urban renewal, that's what it looked like. And then they did the remodel that brought it back to a more...
They painfully regretted it and changed it back.
I also pulled up a picture from 1893 it was. And you can't see the windows because of the great big shaded awning from the hardware store that was there. You can't see the windows, so you can't tell if the stained glass is actually there, and you can't tell it in those pictures either. I don't know if in the 80s those stained glass windows were added, or if that's what they found when they took all the crap off the building. You know, and I don't think anybody else in this room knows either, do we? Do we? Were they originally there?
No, Cynthia Baker's still alive, right?
I don't think so.
She looked right at me.
Oh, you're talking about the lady that... The lady that had the pin cushion, the older, it's my understanding she,
I don't mind hearing from you.
And she had Alzheimer's as well.
I know, but that's not the motion on the table. We gotta deal with that one.
Okay, all right.
Grant, were you saying
Jim,
something?
did you?
Well, I mean, I agree with Brian on one aspect of this, in that I would like to hear from the candidate.
That's
I mean,
all.
the applicant. I hate making a call without him here. Now, we've done it in the past, I know, and we'll do it again, but I just don't like doing that.
I just don't know.
Aside from that, if I were to vote tonight, I'd have to vote no.
All right, and see, so that's wherein, why don't we want to hear from the applicant?
Because he had a very flippant attitude.
What do you mean? I don't know what a
mean,
flipping attitude
He
means.
said that he did not care about historic preservation one bit. He
So-
just wanted what was energy efficient.
So that's the
So-
conversation you had with him?
Yep.
Any other questions?
I could say a couple things.
Okay,
Now, we made a mistake 50 years ago, okay, guys? You know what I'm talking about. We redid the J.K. Turner building. That was us. And besides this building being torn down originally, but we should have put the building back. My dad said years later, it was a mistake. He said, I wish we could have corrected it and taken care of it. So we did that when we bought the Bluebell. We got together and did the Bluebell the right way, which it looks the way it should be. That's why I'm going to vote with the guys here, because I don't believe you want to change something. It's like walking across a river. All of a sudden you find a hole and you fall in it, and you should have just walked around the hole. And that's what we're gonna go down. If we start down this, we're gonna start kicking around saying, okay, well, they changed theirs, well, I wanna change mine. And before long, everybody will change up and down Main Street. And I wanna stay the same way. I'm a historic preservationist. No, I've never been on the Historic Preservation, haven't been on the Historical Society, but what they're doing is exactly right. And if we start down this now, Mayor, we're not gonna come back.
Oh, there's a lot of buildings that have already started on it. But
we need to
again,
stop those.
without even arguing that point, my only issue is, and I don't even know that I'm for or against it anyway. I'm probably gonna have to abstain on this whole thing. But the bottom line is, I don't see the harm in hearing the candidate. Because maybe he's got something to say, other than he's flipping on both ways. Other than maybe he has something to say that's not being addressed here, that's all. Because you know what, I hate for it to stay like this. We're starting in a dilapidation mode here, and by the way, my understanding is he's got a pretty successful insurance company is what I hear as well, with some solid customer base. So supposedly.
well, any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second.
What's the motion?
The motion is to sustain.
In other words, go
the
to vote
denial,
on it.
approve the denial by the HPC of the application.
So a yes means it's not going to change.
A yes
Right.
means that it will not change. A yes means that,
No, you're voting no, that you don't want it. Right?
You're
No,
voting,
no.
we're
If
voting,
you don't want it, you vote no.
we're voting to uphold.
A yes will uphold the HPC decision.
Okay.
A no would mean you don't want to uphold it.
Okay,
Brian, if you abstain, it's a no vote.
I get it.
Yeah, the same thing, right.
Right.
all right? So, everybody understand the motion?
Yes.
Submit your votes.
All votes are in.
See the votes. By a 4-3, it is, the HPC denial is sustained,
Yeah, sustained or upheld.
upheld.
Yep.
Thank you all for your input. And I think we all understand the passion that
Yeah.
the people have in the
Most
room.
definitely.
And we're all trying to do the right thing. We're all trying to do the right thing. Okay, item number 7, amendment number 7 to owner-engineer agreement with Park Hill. Hayden is not here. Are you handling it, Eddie? Okay.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'd ask that we table this item for now. Kate and I discussed this. I think we would like to reevaluate before we move forward. So would ask to make a motion to table.
Okay, we'll make the motion to table.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any questions? Submit your votes.
All votes are in.
See the votes. Unanimous, then approval to table item number 8. Item number 9, retail strategies, professional services agreement. Shonda, are you handling that?
She's handling it.
Sorry,
Man, that was
could have been
fast.
faster, sorry.
You are good.
Yes, so this, as we discussed previously, this is a contract with Retail Strategies to do retail recruitment work for the city of Guthrie. This is to approve or deny their contract.
Okay. And that presentation has already been made to us, that you recall. Any questions of Shonda? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Last minute thoughts? Submit your votes.
All votes are in.
See the votes. Unanimous approval to move forward with retail strategies and our annual agreement with them. Item number 10, city manager report. Eddie?
No report, Mayor.
Okay. Item number 11, comments from city council. Vice Mayor Gary.
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Bothroyd.
Nothing here.
Councilman Case.
Nothing.
Councilman Rob.
Oh, just had a great time today. I thought it was really positive, and I enjoyed the meeting we had earlier today at the council retreat. I appreciate everybody up here's input. I liked my group. Our group was over here. And other than that, yeah, we did good. Other than that, that's all.
Councilman Taylor.
I'll second what he said, and staff, you guys did a great job too. Set up, take down, and what you prepared for us, and as well as the lady from Meridian Votech, that was outstanding. So I really appreciate you being there. Thank you.
Councilman Williams.
I'll third.
Also agree with all of that. It was, I think, a good experience for all of us, and I think some good outcome, some good product that we can give to staff, administration moving forward. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned, and don't leave. We have another one.
We got
another one coming.
Get up.
It's shrimp on the brain.
I call to order our Public Works Authority meeting.
I thought we were done too, Jim. Don't worry about it.
Call to order our Public Works Authority meeting of June 18th. I guess he wants me to move along.
Would be nice.
Item number 2 is consent agenda items A, B, C, and D. A is the approval of the Public Works Authority meeting of June 4th. B is the approval of payment to Southwest Water Works, payment number 4 for $520,697.38 for water main replacement project. C is the approval of payment to HCCCO for payment number 35 for $107,920.55 for a wastewater treatment plant. And D is the approval of payment also to HCCCO for payment number 36 for $239,164.79, also for work completed on the wastewater treatment plant. I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through D.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Submit your votes.
All votes are in.
See the votes. Unanimous approval to approve the consent agenda items A, B, C, and D. Item number 3 is items removed from the consent agenda, of which there were none. With that, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Jim Case and Company,